voice.
So the Landmarks Board meeting is called to order. Welcome to the November 2nd, 2022 Landmarks Board meeting. It's 6:01 p.m. I would like to introduce our moderator this evening, Brenda Rittenauer. Before we begin, Brenda will review the virtual meeting decorum. First slide, please.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Brenda Rittenauer. I'm with our community engagement team, which is what brings me to my role in this meeting this evening. We have worked with the community to develop a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversation. The vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, for staff, and for board and commission members. It also supports democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experience, and political perspectives. You can learn more about it by going to the website and in the search bar putting in productive atmospheres. That's at bouldercolorado.gov. Next slide, please. The following are some examples of our rules of decorum that are found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. And these will be upheld tonight during this meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct this meeting are prohibited. And participants may raise their hand to speak during open comment and public comment periods during hearings. Individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. I am seeing some folks who are in the meeting now under their organization names or not necessarily their whole, the name they're commonly known as. So if you think that's you, please reach out to me if you plan to speak in the Q&A box and I can change your name for you. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted in virtual meetings. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you so much, Brenda. So I want to acknowledge that we have a full quorum tonight, including our ex officio member from the planning board. As with in-person Landmark Board meetings, the recording of this meeting will be available in the Records Archive and on YouTube within 28 days of this meeting. We'll do a quick roll call and introductions of the board members and our ex officio member of the planning board. I'm Abby Daniels, chair of the Landmarks Board. Bill?
I'm Bill Jellick.
Chelsea?
Hi, Chelsea Castellano.
Thank you, John.
I'm John Decker.
Ronnie?
Ronnie Pelucio, also a Landmarks Board member.
And last but not least, Laura.
Hi, Laura Kaplan. I'm the liaison to the planning board.
Thank you, Laura. We know that people are here to participate, may have strong emotions about a particular project. We want to hear you, and we have found it to be more productive if you are speaking to persuade us rather than berating us, staff, or the applicant. We will be following the usual format the best we can. The owners and applicants have agreed to use this format. As with regular Landmarks Board meetings, you may only speak at the appropriate time during public participation or at the appropriate time during the public hearing. Requests to speak outside of those times will be denied. The one hearing we have tonight is quasi-judicial, so any person testifying, including the applicant, will be sworn in individually. As board chair, I will call for a roll call vote on any motions made. And then if you guys would be kind enough to share the group agreements that we came up with on our retreat in July. And just as a reminder, this is a living document. Changes are always welcome, and we continue to welcome open dialogue. Board members are welcome to use the raised hand feature to introduce a new topic when we get into deliberations. We'll now move on to approval of the October 12th meeting minutes. Does anybody have any changes or alterations to the minutes? Seeing none, I move that we approve these minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, John Decker, for seconding the motion. We will do a roll call vote. Bill,
Aye.
Chelsea,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Ronnie,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so the October 12th minute meetings passes. Now we will go to public participation for non-agenda items. Brenda, are you seeing anyone yet raising their hand or indicating they would like to speak during public participation?
Yes, we do have a hand up, and just a reminder, you will find your raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you don't see that raise hand button, you may have a reactions button and find it there. So I do have one hand up, and Aubrey, if you are ready with the timer, then we can go ahead and enable Patrick York's microphone. If it will let me do that.
I am just about ready with the timer.
And I am having trouble
Okay.
with Patrick's enabling talking for Patrick O'Rourke. You may need to do that, Aubrey.
Weird. I'll promote Patrick to a panelist.
Thank you. And Patrick, we do request that you keep your camera off in consistency with our current policies.
Hi, everybody. It's okay for me to start?
Well, Patrick, will you be kind enough to
Oh.
raise your hand and swear to tell the board?
I should know this by now.
I know.
I'm Patrick O'Rourke. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Three things. Number one, on Historic Boulder, I thought it would be a good idea just to bring you guys up to speed on what we're up to, because we work together closely. And so in the last couple months, we did our Meet the Spirits over at Columbia Cemetery, and we had 475 people join us that day. So it was a really fabulous turnout. The weather was great, the spirits were great, and the support that we got from the city was well received, and they were very helpful throughout the whole process. We are doing our Home for the Holidays on Saturday, December 3rd. It's going to be up on the University Hill area, and the featured house will be Scott Carpenter's home. So I'm hoping you guys have an opportunity to join us. We have, I think at this point, 5 houses, and we're hoping to get a 6th house. It's only going to be a one-day event from 10 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. And then the final one is we pushed our 50-year gala off until February of next year, and we're just going to do it at the annual meeting. We didn't have the type of participation we were hoping to, and then our sponsor was ill. So that's the gentleman that owns the Boulderado Hotel. He's our benefactor on that one. So looking forward to that. Regarding Historic Boulder, first of all, I want to thank John Decker personally. He reached out to me today to work on the Historic District. We're looking forward to it. I'm traveling for the next month. I'll be out of the country. So I'm hoping to get together the first or second week in December. Our goal is to get this launched in January and before the city council, before the 3rd quarter of next year. That being said, the other item that came up at the historic board meeting was Bill Jellick's color palettes. We discussed it at the board, and we believe that it's a very important program to keep moving forward. So don't lose the energy that it needs to happen, because what we're seeing are houses that are being painted that just don't fit in with the neighborhood where they are, and it's not necessarily the owner's fault if there's no standards that have to be met. That being said, then I'm going to take this. I'm speaking as a non-historic Boulder member, but in 2021 there was an LDRC meeting for the garbage reception area, garbage containers over at Chautauqua. There's going to be challenges moving forward. I don't want to go into too much detail, but because it was approved at the LDRC and it's going before the city council tomorrow night, there's going to be a lot of people there objecting to it for two reasons. Number one, for a lot of reasons, but number one is to put a garbage collection center for 100 homes within 100 feet of a neighbor is a challenge. And then I just saw that I played pickleball over there. And so I just saw yesterday, and this should be a concern to this board, is that somebody put up at the city level a
Patrick,
6 foot,
your time is up.
I know, and so I'm finishing, a 6 foot wall, a solid wall between the playground and the tennis courts, blocking that area. So I don't know if that went before the LDRC, but it's a wall, and it's the first wall I've seen at Chautauqua since I've been
Patrick,
here.
we do need to
Yeah.
be
Thank you.
fair to
That's
other
it.
leaders.
Thank you
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Hey, Patrick, this is Bill Jellick. Since you mentioned me, I should make it clear that this color project that we got
Mhm.
started was not done by me.
Oh, okay.
No,
Well,
this was, I was the person that had most of the work because I'm retired and I have bandwidth. But this was a board initiated project, which will likely just sit on the shelf somewhere for a while, unfortunately.
Thank you for the clarification, Bill. We do have
Pardon?
one. Sorry,
I didn't-
thank you for the clarification.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
We do have one more public participant. Did we want to take other responses first, Abby?
Does any,
A couple hands from board members.
okay,
We do have one more member of the public waiting.
Yep, I guess maybe somebody saw my hand. So this is Ronnie speaking for those of you that can't see me. But Patrick, again, thank you so much for attending and for all of your comments and the information as well. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry that your time is kind of cut short. If there's additional information that you feel that you would like to share with us, please do. You can do that via email. But again, I'm very grateful to know that you're here and speaking up. It's very helpful. So thank you.
Chelsea, did you have your hand up? Yes. Chelsea, next.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to one thing that Patrick said. Thanks for being here. But one thing he mentioned was that the LDRC approved that garbage corral. And it was at the last Landmarks Board meeting where the board actually approved it. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And Bill?
Thanks, Ronnie, for jogging me a little bit. I too also want to, along with Chelsea, thank Patrick for weighing in with information from Historic Boulder. Very important. You are the leading edge of preservation in this community, and it's critical that you get your words out there. And this is a perfect forum to express what is happening with your group. And I thank you a lot for doing it.
Ronnie?
Yep. Sorry. Just one last thing. Point of clarification. I think that the dumpster / trash enclosure was in fact approved at the DRC, and that at the last board meeting, what we were evaluating was the request for the change in the material. And that's my memory of it. I just wanted to say that, Chelsea, I think that's how that played out. And for anybody listening, I'm pretty confident that that's what happened there. If not, maybe Claire can jump in and share any clarifications on that, as I know people attending this may in fact be planning on going to the city council meeting, and I would hate for us to maybe have misinformation out there, but I think that's the process that it went through.
I think you're right, Ronnie, that in 2021, it was approved by a different LDRC than the one that recently saw it with the request for the change in materials. John, I see your hand up.
Well, I was just going to confirm that. I was at the LDRC meeting, and I believe it was with Bill, and we called it up to the board because of the change of material. And Chelsea was correct to remind us it was last month that we approved the material.
No, well, what we're not to get all wrapped around the axle with minutia here, but I think And it's something for Claire or somebody at staff to validate, but I think the original request, John, was potentially a DRC / administrative action, and it wasn't something that came to the full board to look at, I think. But I
That's
would like
why-
Claire to validate that
Yes.
for us. She might have access to that material because it looks like this is building into something important enough that we get the facts straight on it.
Yep, I can confirm that the location of the trash enclosure and the trash enclosure itself was approved in October 2021 by the Landmarks Design Review Committee, and the change in material was approved by the Landmarks Board last month, October 2022. Does
Thank
that
you,
make
Claire.
sense to everybody? Okay, good.
Thank you, Claire. If there's no more comments from the board right now, I believe we have several additional members of the public who would like to speak.
We do. There's one hand up now. There was another hand up earlier. We are still in open comment at the beginning of the meeting. So if you would like to participate in open comment, please use your raise hand button. At this moment, we have Catherine Barth with her hand up. So Catherine, I will enable your microphone and we'll ask you to swear in, and then Aubrey will start the timer.
I swear to tell the truth, and I'm very happy to be here. And I thank you, Bill, for guiding me through the labyrinth of getting onto this meeting. But thank you so much.
I'm just really happy you have my text address, Catherine.
Well, no, you're probably, I don't know if you're happy or not, but I have it, and I'm
No,
feeling
that's-
kind of desperate. So,
That's fine. I know the feeling.
but anyway, I did want to add a little bit to what Patrick talked to you about the trash enclosure, and you know, the actual issue of what happened and whatever is not really, I mean, I'm concerned about that, but what I am more concerned about is what I see is a lack of Chautauqua reaching out to its neighbors and the community. And I mean, we've not had, you know, there's another little meeting, another little group called Friends of Chautauqua. And this is not a meeting of them. This is just my observation. But for quite a few years, there was a lot of public input. And I relate this to building the bathrooms by the concert hall. And that had a lot of public input. And I remember being there at least 2 tours where we walked around and looked at different sites. And then the issue of the lighting, changing the lighting to be dark skies, proper lighting. And I have to say that Marcy did a wonderful job. And there was much input from the community and the neighbors and from Historic Boulder. And there were people from the Landmarks Board. And we spent, I don't know, Marcy spent a lot of time facilitating this. And at the end, I think everybody was happy. And people were really pretty satisfied with where that bathroom was going. So I just would like Chautauqua or to get back to the point of including other people before they make a pathway that ends in a decision that is upsetting the residents and the neighbors of Chautauqua. So I thank you very much. And let's try and be a friendlier Chautauqua or somehow get them talking to people again, because they were doing that some years ago. Thank you so much. And I guess that's it. Bye.
Thank you, Catherine. Brenda, any other members of the public?
Yes, we have one more person. Lynn Siegel would like to participate. So Lynn, I will enable your microphone and
I swear the best I know the truth, and that is up to perception. So, you know, your truth or my truth. I swear to the truth the best I know it. And going on Catherine's segue to Chautauqua, I really feel that Stephanie Truce, who was at 1500 Mariposa, should have had her windows. I just can't see why it was kicked up to Landmarks Board. Like, it's so simple. The windows. She's a historic preservationist. She's done 19 historic preservations, and she got kicked up to the Landmarks Board. Doesn't make sense from the perception of a stupid, unintelligent person from the public that's just looking at the situation. It seems like an easy deal. The windows in Chautauqua, like really thin, really neat, like what are they going to do? I don't know. But, if there's something like this that comes up, maybe you ought to include the public a little bit closer to how your whole system operates. Because from my perception, it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem fair. And I don't want to just be, opposing things. I want to understand them. And I don't see that there's very much understanding to the public from this Landmarks Board. Maybe you need to have some open workshops or something. Maybe you need to have a different engagement process. But I don't feel welcomed into figuring out how these decisions are being made. And when I look at, for example, 721 Spruce Street, I think that's the address. The big place where there's, it's an old rock house. There was a forest there in the driveway. You'll remember the driveway. It was last time. They agreed to dump the driveway. I've gone every year for the last 20 years up that driveway for their garage sale every year, Now, I probably would have voted to dump the driveway because I don't like cars and I only drive like every 6 months. But maybe there were other reasons that driveway should have stayed there for other people that enjoyed that garage sale and felt that it had a historic presence there. And that whole lot on the west side had trees all over. They're all just gone. How can we just let our trees go like this? That, I don't know. Maybe you've got some guidelines that make you get rid of trees like that, but maybe you need to change your guidelines. I don't know. It just doesn't look that good to me from the public. And I ride my bike constantly all around Mapleton Hill, and I see these historic places all the time. So I would like to see that. I'm glad about the color palettes because I don't like to be assaulted by bad colors.
Lynn, I'm sorry, but your time just expired.
I saw that. It was 0. I was going right to the end.
Okay, thank you.
Trying to not get interrupted. Thanks.
Thank you. And I don't see any other hands up at this time. We'll give a pause for last call. And I think we are safe to close.
Okay, so we will officially close public participation for items not on the agenda. And then I will turn it over to Claire for the statistical report for October.
Thank you, Abby. We sound as bad as one another. Okay. So October statistics, blue as usual are the LACs, and pink and purple are demolition reviews. As you can tell from the pie, we approved more LACs this month than demolitions. We reviewed and approved 16 LACs in October in total. 10 were approved by staff. That's these ones. They're mainly roofing, AC units, painting, that kind of thing. 6 were reviewed by the LDRC and approved. 3 were approved without any additional review, and 3 came back to staff for some additional review before they were approved. And then 2 were reviewed by the full board and are not issued quite yet, as the call-up period ends tomorrow. We approved 12 demolition requests. 3 applications, the dark purple ones, were reviewed by these 3 were reviewed by the LDRC, and 2 were referred to the Landmarks Board for a review in a public hearing, and 1, this kind of mid-purple here, was approved by the LDRC. Staff called up this pre-1940s demo to the full board, and it was subsequently withdrawn, but it does show up here as one that was not approved and referred to the full Landmarks Board. So this is the year so far. We are typically around 314 closed reviews by the end of October. So we're lagging slightly this year with 284. And I'd like to point out again what a busy year it has been for demolition review. You can see the big piece of purple here. We've completed 141 demo reviews so far this year. 126 of those have been reviewed by staff. So all of them post 1940 buildings. 15 have been reviewed by the LDRC or the Landmarks Board, including 6 of those that were escalated by staff for additional review. So those would have been also post 1940 buildings. And this is our graph of new applications compared with the last 2 years. We've received and processed 33 new applications this month, which is a busier October than we've had for the last couple of years. Yay. But against the 6-year average for new applications, it was pretty typical. So any questions on the statistical report? All right, back to you, Abby.
Thank you so much, Claire. So now we will move forward to our one public hearing this evening. It's a public hearing in consideration of a landmark alteration certificate application to restore front porch and replace rear addition with new rear addition at 429 Highland Avenue, a contributing property in the Mapleton Hill Historic District pursuant to section 91118 of the Boulder Revised Code. And the applicant is Tim Sullivan and the owners are Andy and Emily Strong. We'll move on to this hearing, and thank you to the owners who have agreed to this virtual quasi-judicial hearing. So Claire, I don't know if thank you, Claire, perfect.
Right, so I will go through the quasi-judicial hearing procedures. All speaking to the item will be sworn in today, and board members will note any ex parte contacts. I'll give the staff presentation. After that, the board may ask questions. The applicant will have up to 10 minutes to present to the board, and the board may ask questions of them. We'll then open the public hearing. After all members of the public have made comments, the applicant may respond to anything that was said. We'll then ask everyone to mute their computers, and the board will deliberate. A motion requires an affirmative vote of at least 3 members to pass, and motions will state findings, conclusions, and recommendation. I wanted to remind you that the conditions should be read into the motion, so it's on the audio as well as in the written minutes. And a record of the hearing is kept by staff. I realized that I didn't note down who previously reviewed this at LDRC, and I apologize for that, but I will pass it back to Abby for ex parte contacts.
Thank you. So as to any ex parte contacts, Bill?
None.
Chelsea?
None.
John?
None.
Ronnie?
None.
And I have none.
Okay. Well, the criteria for review again are outlined in the Boulder Revised Code under 91118B and C. The criteria for review are to ensure the proposed work preserves, enhances, or restores and does not damage or adversely affect exterior architectural features or the historic value of the property, that the work proposed is compatible with the character of the property, and that the Landmarks Board considers the economic feasibility of alterations. Options today for the Landmarks Board are to approve the application. This is typically subject to a 16-day City Council call-up period, but it will need to be extended since that hits Thanksgiving holiday. It will just be extended for a week. Deny the application, which would be subject to a 45-day period in which City Council can review the decision, and a denial would mean the applicant could not submit the same application within 12 months. The board may also allow the applicant to withdraw. So this is where I wrote down the who reviewed it at LDRC. The application was reviewed back in January 26th by the LDRC, and was called up at that time by John, Fran, and James. The applicant revised the design and returned to the LDRC on June 29th. And John and Chelsea and I reviewed the design and again referred the application to the Landmarks Board for a review and a public hearing. We received a new design on September 6th, which is where we are today. So before we carry on, any questions from the board on process? Okay, cool. So 429 Highland is located here mid-block between 4th and 5th Streets. The house faces south onto Highland, and the rear of the house backs onto Mapleton Alley, which is here. The 1.5-story house was built sometime around 1899, and the architecture reflects that more sort of subdued Edwardian period. We have overlapping front gables with, you can probably just about see it, a shingle pattern. There are double hung 1/1 windows throughout, but also some of these horizontal windows, which are original to the period, and I'll point them out as we go around. You can see there's also a little bit of flair in these decorative knee braces. The wrapped front porch has these paired columns. The porch has been modified to close it in all the way along. And the pediment also, you can see on the historic picture, there was a pediment between the first and second columns kind of up here. And that has been removed at some point in the past. And also the front entry has been relocated. This is an addition here, and that's where the front entry currently is, because you can't access the front porch from outside of the house. So this is a 1939 to 1949 photograph, we think. That's how it's labeled on the tax assessor card. It actually has some writing down on the negative down here. So we think that it actually might be earlier than that and might be 1929. But since it was marked as a 1939 to 1949 photograph on the card, we're going with that with this one. But you can see the front entry was right here underneath the pediment, and we believe that there was a fourth set of columns at this end here that's hiding behind a tree. You can also see there's a central chimney here, which unfortunately is also behind this tree on the historic image, but that central chimney is an original feature. It's a good indication of the age of the house. Let's go around to the west side of the house. This is the west elevation. There's a little bit of glare, but you can just about see that central chimney back here. There's also a second chimney on the west elevation. There's a modest dormer behind this tree, and an additional one of those horizontal windows, which is original to the house. You can see it on the this is a 1929 photograph. This is from the tax assessor card for the neighbor to the west. So this is just the edge of the building that we can see on that tax assessor card. So you can see that the horizontal window was original. It was probably an interior staircase, and that's why it was added. So it looks a bit odd, but it is original. You can see on this image too that there is a second small dormer here, and that is still on the house all the way behind the tree. And there's also, this is the bow window that you can see. Well, maybe you can't see it, but it is here behind the tree. You can see it on the site plan. That's right here. So continuing around, this is the rear elevation. This corner of the house here is this corner. The arrow is pointing to it. This was actually sketched onto the tax assessor card back in 1939. But we also have a permit on file for the remodel of the interior of this portion of the house in 1970. So it's really unclear as to whether this was modified at that time, and if that upper level here was added in the 1970s, or whether that was a later addition, because we're pretty sure that this portion of the house here would have been a single story. So this, however, is definitely a 1993 addition. And if this wasn't added in the 1970s, it has been modified since in 1993. So that is this portion here. So continuing around to the east elevation, you can see the kind of staggered roof line here. This middle gable is the gable that includes the dormer that you can see on the west side, that west elevation dormer. So it was present before 1929. This more rear gable is the one that we don't know if it was added in 1970 or after, as is this portion of the building. In plan view, it is, that's this right here. This area here in the middle was added in 1932. You can see the stone foundation, and we have a permit record of that addition that is here on the plan. We think that the windows were replaced in the 1990s. These two windows here. This all the way at the front is that front door addition that we saw on the front elevation. So that was a lot. Hopefully I haven't confused you thoroughly. Did anyone have any questions before we move on to the proposal? Ronnie?
The orange line at the back,
yeah,
that's
Yep.
internal to the plan. Yeah, right there, that corner, interior corner, right there. Not that one, but go down a little bit.
This one?
That right there. Is that line, where's the information? Where did we get the information that told us that's where that wall was?
It's an estimation from the tax assessor card. So the tax assessor footprint, they draw and annotate measurements, and that was 1939 to 1949 showed this outline, jogging in here, coming out again, and going all the way
Gotcha.
around.
Okay.
The red
you.
line is what we believe to be existing still, and the orange is stuff that has been lost due to future, subsequent additions.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions? All right. Plowing ahead. So we just went over the outlines. As I said, the red lines are the original to the house. So we've got the front porch, that bow window, this rear area that might have been modified in the 70s. This dotted line is the 1993 addition, which comes around to here, and then there's the front door addition. I dropped it in there. It's kind of an estimation. This is that stone addition, the 1932 addition with the stone foundation. So the proposal is to restore the front porch to 1939 photograph. That's here. Remove this front entry addition and remove this entire rear portion that was added in 1993 and construct a new addition. And you can see that solid line. So there's this rear part of the wall that's proposed for demolition here, with the new construction kind of following a similar footprint to the 1993 edition, but being coming out slightly differently, and then meeting up with that 1932 edition right here, and also along this wall here, a continuation of this front porch wall, with the 93 edition for the front door being removed. This is the facade. This is the south elevation facing Highland. And again, the proposal is to remove the front porch roof and reconstruct it and restore the entry steps to the front porch based on the 1939-1949 tax assessor photograph, and where we assume the front door would have been based on where the front entry stairs are. Let's see what else. Oh, and then infill, there's an existing French door here on the porch, and the proposal is to infill that to just fill it up with siding here and make the front door moved to this location. Remove the non-historic skylight, that's in the front gable that you get a better view of when we look at the east elevation, but that's right here on this front gable. And reconstruct.
Excuse me, Claire, say that
Yeah.
again. What are you pointing to?
There's
restate what that was.
On this front gable here, there's a skylight on the east elevation, on the east side of that front gable. So the proposal is to remove that skylight.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll show you that again when we get round to the east side, if I make it that far. Sorry. Okay. Also, the central chimney here, the proposal is to reconstruct that chimney to match the existing. And the applicant has provided this great rendering of the proposal showing the front porch. This will actually include restoring the rectilinear walkway from the sidewalk to the front door. And the proposed colors are Buxton blue and white dove trim with black window sash. All right, moving around to the west elevation, again, the proposal is to demolish the existing addition, which we know is 1993 or 1970 onwards, and also portions of the historic house at the rear, including this portion which may have been modified in the 1970s, and this upper portion here, which included that small dormer. The proposal is to construct a shed roof transition that is nearly 4 feet lower than the historic roof. This is the ridge of the historic roof, and this is the transition roof. The shed roof of this connector actually cuts into the historic roof line right here. The proposal is to construct a rear cross gable 2-story addition, and we can see that better from the rear elevation, but that's mainly this whole portion here. There's also a plan to replace the historic window at this existing front dormer here, and that is for egress, and to remove and reconstruct the bow window roof, which is right here. It's actually drawn here as a bay, and I missed that at some point. It must have changed from a bow to a bay. I don't think we need to split hairs on that. But if you had questions on that, feel free to ask. The new windows proposed in the addition are all double hung on this elevation, with the exception of these new windows, these new French casement windows at this dormer. So here's again a rendering of this this elevation from the corner. The existing southwest corner of the house will remain generally unchanged all the way back to the bay window here, with the exception of this portion of the house here, and the addition at the rear, obviously. So this is the north elevation. This is the rear of the house, and the proposal is to remove this entire rear addition and replace it with the rear cross gable 2-story addition. The dominant gable, the north facing gable here, is about 2 feet below the historic ridge height, and the cross gables are 2.5 feet below the historic ridge height. And the pitch of this gable generally matches the historic gable at the front of the house. There's a new shed roof here across the lower level, and 3 pairs of double sliding patio doors proposed at that level. There's a balcony on the second level above that shed roof, but it's actually inset into that shed roof and not cantilevered. And there's a group of 3 sliding doors at that balcony level. I wanted to point out this shed dormer here. This is part of the connector between the historic and new parts of the house. And I wanted to point that out because it does actually introduce a different pitch. And the other roof slopes mirror the historic portions of the house. This is the rendering of that north elevation, and you can see the 3 pairs of sliding doors at the lower level and the triplet up here at the balcony level. Okay, this is the east elevation. The proposal is to remove this entry addition and that gable roof, and replace it with a new addition, which is in the same plane as the east portion of this east. Sorry, that's not the east, but the porch wall here. It's inset from the 1932 edition, which is this part. there's a new horizontal window here and here. And those proportions, those horizontal windows kind of match the proportion of the historic horizontal windows at the west elevation and the front. This window here is proposed to be replaced. Again, this is the historic window opening in the dormer, and that's proposed for a French casement window. The proposal is to remove this addition that was constructed in 1993 here, and that's where the cross gable addition will sit. Again, there's this shed roof transition that's 3 feet, nearly 4 feet lower than the historic roof ridge. And as with the west elevation, the transition cuts into the historic roof line a little bit right here. Let's see what else. So there are skylights proposed at the new rear addition all the way at the back here. You can see the chimney. This is the central chimney that I pointed out from the front elevation. And the plan is to demolish and reconstruct that chimney. Again, all the windows proposed in the rear addition, the new part of the house, are double hung. And I forgot to mention these two. These are the windows in the 1932 edition that we believe were replaced in the 90s. And they are proposed to be replaced again to kind of fit better with the proportions of the windows in the addition, but also to be functioning windows. Right now they are fixed windows. And here is a rendering of that east elevation. You can see the the historic front dormer. And this wall that I was trying to explain, this currently sticks out with that the front dormer that you can, sorry, not front dormer, the front addition with the gable roof that you can see in the image. That's proposed for demolition, and this wall replaces that. This is the 1932 edition. And here are the new roof forms above that. And here's the skylight. Here's the placement of the skylight, which is going to be removed. So going through, or did anyone have any questions about all of that before I move on to the analysis?
I have one.
You have one.
Yeah.
Okay, John.
Claire, on that,
Yeah.
that entry on the side of the house that is proposed to be removed, when was that added? You said that was added as part of an addition. Was that the 30s edition or more recently?
We think that was the 1993 edition.
Okay.
It's not really clear on the permit, but it seems like that's the correct age for that.
And that was serving as the principal entry into the house?
It does. Yeah.
Okay, it does now. So
It does
they're
now.
restoring the historic entry line then.
Correct. Go all the way back and find it. You can see here.
Yeah.
The walkway is down the side of the house, and then this is the entry kind of going in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand that. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right. You scoot back on to the design analysis. So the Mapleton Hill Historic District design guidelines we referred to include the building alignment, which says that the general pattern of alignment should be preserved. Decks, solid fences, or other additions should be located where they will not intrude into the space. Open front porches are elements which are encouraged, if appropriate to the style of the house, even if they encroach into the existing alignment. We considered that the restoration of the historic location of the front door and the historic layout of the front porch would help reinstate that historic pattern and alignment of the front of the house to the sidewalk. I could have just gone ahead one slide, John, to answer your question. So I believe this is the between the first and second column. It's kind of hard to tell with that tree in the way, so maybe the applicant can confirm that. And this is where the original pediment was, but the plan is to restore that as the entry onto the porch, and then have the front entry be directly in front of the porch steps, and to remove this French door that's right here currently.
I see.
Yeah. And also a rectilinear path directly from the sidewalk to the steps, which is very traditional. We also looked at the massing, and the house is asymmetrical historically, with very vertical proportions, and a 1.5-story addition proposed at the rear maintains this asymmetry and proportion. The guidelines for the roof say any alterations should be sensitive to form, pitch, and symmetry of the existing roof. And the existing roof form, pitch, and material should be used for any additions. Roof lines on additions should generally be lower than and secondary to the roof line of the original house. Roof lines interrupted by solar panels, skylights, and roof decks demand sensitivity in design to be appropriate. Dormers are intended to be elements of secondary importance to the main roof form. Any expression of existing dormers or additions of new dormers should preserve this relationship. So we consider that the roof form and pitch of the historic portions of the house is generally replicated in the proposed gables throughout the addition, and the material is matched. The low pitch shed roof dormer at the east-west elevation changes the roof form to a more horizontal element, but we didn't consider this to be problematic as the visibility is minimal. You can see my arrows pointing out that that connector part. In addition, the roof line of this connector is and the whole, actually the whole of the rear is at least 12 inches lower than the historic roof line, and that connector is almost 4 feet lower. Skylights are proposed only on the new addition and all the way at the rear. We'll be back here. One element that we did flag as being potentially inconsistent with the guidelines was the proposed removal of that small dormer on the west elevation, which the arrow is pointing to, this little tiny guy right here. So moving on to windows. Window openings themselves should be carefully preserved, should not be made larger or smaller to accommodate a different size window. Every effort should be made to preserve existing windows by repair. Openings should be vertical in proportion. Horizontal sliding windows are generally inappropriate. Windows in new construction should reflect the window patterns of the district. And casement windows are generally inappropriate, but when used should be of similar proportions to historic windows. There are some new windows proposed to replace existing historic windows on both the east and west elevation at this forward dormer here. So this is the east elevation. This is the location of that proposed French casement window. They are for egress. The window opening size will remain the same. The lower level, the windows right here are not believed to be historic and are proposed for replacement. There are new horizontal windows on this east elevation. They generally reflect the proportion of the historic horizontal windows. They are awning windows proposed for those horizontal windows. The other windows proposed are double hung, and the proposed windows on the rear addition, the new construction, they don't exactly match the proportion of the historic windows, but are generally in the same proportion, are vertical and smaller on the upper level. Again, this is the west elevation. This is the location for those French casement windows to replace historic windows in the forward dormer. The windows at the front of the house, these historic windows, are not proposed to be replaced, including the ones in the bay window, but the ones in the new addition are, and the double hungs at the rear addition do generally reflect the same proportions as the historic windows, and the ones in the upper levels are smaller. For exterior materials, we could see specific details of siding at LDRC for review, but generally the siding is proposed to match the existing wood siding on the that's on the historic portion of the house. The proposed addition at the rear is this is the rendering of the rear, is simplified and doesn't attempt to replicate that shingle siding in the dormer, in the gable end. Moving on to porches and railings. So the historic porch is, the proposal is to restore it based on the 1939 tax assessor photograph. A replication of this pediment hasn't been proposed, but other porch elements that are seen on this fuzzy photograph are proposed to be restored as best as possible, including what we assume are 4 pairs of columns. This is the first and second pair, there's a third pair here, and we think that there is a 4th pair here because this is the roof line, but it's kind of hiding behind a tree. The stairs are here with an opening to access what is assumed to be the front door right here. There's an existing deck at the rear that is here that's proposed to be demolished. And there's a new deck that's proposed to go here where the new patio doors are. And details of that proposed new deck could be reviewed by the LDRC or alternatively excluded from this LAC and a new application provided for rear deck and landscaping. There is a 2nd-story balcony right here, but staff considered it to be appropriately incorporated into that shed roof and not cantilevered. The details of the railing could also be provided to the LDRC. So in paint and colors, the applicants consulted with an architectural historian on appropriate colors. The body color that they proposed was a light blue, which is not typical for a 19th century home, but they found photographs where the house is painted this similar color. And the house was blue as recently as 2007, according to Google Maps. Trim color proposed is this white dove, and window sash is proposed as black. And staff considered that using black for window sash is appropriate and typical of a traditional Edwardian Queen Anne age house and style house. The guidelines on major additions say that an addition to the rear, or in some cases to the side of a historic structure, is generally more appropriate than raising the height of a building. Although oversized dormers may make the best use of interior space, they are usually not appropriate, and more than one smaller dormer is usually more appropriate. New additions should be designed and constructed so that the character defining features of the historic building are not radically changed, obscured, damaged, or destroyed in the process of rehabilitation. And new design and construction should always be differentiated from older portions of the building. However, the addition should respect the existing roof forms and building scale and massing. We considered that the proposed 1.5-story addition is it is set at the rear and lower than the main roof line and setback from the front part of the house, so we considered it to be appropriate. The visibility of the addition would be pretty low due to how far it's set back, and due to the existing historic dormers that block view from the public right-of-way. Talking about these ones here, you can see them here. The proposed addition is generally in the same location as the 1990s addition. However, historic portions of the house are proposed to be removed to construct the new addition, notably the little tiny dormer that's hiding here. And we thought that since those features are not visible from the street, may not be considered character defining. The general guidelines don't conflict with the Mapleton Hill guidelines on any of the proposed. So staff found the proposal appropriate for the following reasons. Restoration of the historic location of the front door and the historic layout of the front porch will help reinstate the historic pattern and alignment of the front of the house to the sidewalk. There is photographic evidence to refer to when restoring the front porch. The rear north elevation is the most appropriate location to build an addition, and it replaces, the proposal replaces an existing addition that might not be appropriate based on current interpretation of the guidelines, mainly the window shapes. The proposed new addition is subordinate to the historic house and generally preserves this asymmetry, vertical proportion, and general massing of the house through the addition of similarly proportioned gables, and is not visible from the street. And although it may be minimally visible from the alley, adjacent properties include rear additions that have large cross gables, so it will not appear out of context. There are a couple of items that we wanted to flag for board discussion and consideration. Exploration of modifying the proposal to retain the historic fabric on the west elevation, notably that small dormer, and to potentially avoid cutting into the historic roof for the new shed dormer on the east and west elevations. And exploration of restoring the porch pediment based on the 1939 tax assessor photograph. And we also noted the details that we are proposing we see at a future LDRC meeting. And in general, the proposal seems consistent with the design guidelines, and here's the recommended motion, and I'm going to stop now because I'm just about to lose my voice. Any questions?
No questions for Claire at this point. See, Claire, I'm inspired by your voice. No, if we don't have any questions for staff at this point, we will move on to the applicant presentation. And I'm not sure who will be speaking tonight for the applicant.
I see Alyssa and Andy and Emily and Tim. So if
And of course,
can-
applicants have 10 minutes, so you can share it.
And applicants, you may be seeing an invitation pop up on your screen to become a panelist. We ask that you do so that you will have control over your microphones and cameras if you wish. And Emily and Andy, let me bring you over as well if you would like to be part of the presentation.
Hello.
Andy, here we go. Sorry, just getting everybody over to this side of the meeting. Emily, you may be seeing an invitation. I'll send it one more time and then we'll guess that you are either sitting with Andy or not part of the presentation team.
She's going to stay muted because she's with the kids at the moment.
Okay, I think we have them, Claire.
Thank you. I'm not sure who would like to start off, but each person that speaks will need to swear to tell the board the full truth. So I don't know, Tim or Andy, if you're going to kick things off.
I'll start. This is Andy Strom. I swear to tell the truth. And I just like to thank you all for letting us be here. We're a small family, been in Boulder for 10 years. We used to live up the canyon and always loved coming down to Mapleton Hill. Was really our welcoming to Boulder. And we're just excited to live in the neighborhood. We live on that front porch and in the front yard. If you walk around the neighborhood, you probably see us sitting there all the time and our two girls running up and down the street. But thanks for having us. I'm going to let Tim do the talking. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Alyssa Scrofano. This is Tim Sullivan. I swear to tell the whole truth.
I swear to tell the truth.
We've already introduced ourselves, but we'll reintroduce. Alyssa Scrofano and Tim Sullivan were the architects for Emily and Andy Strom for this project located at 429 Highland Avenue. I want to thank Claire for an amazing presentation. We had a 10-page presentation all set, and I think she covered almost everything. And Andy covered that he and Emily used to live up in Sunshine Canyon in a Hobie Wagner house, and chose to move down to Mapleton Hill to live in that community. And they're committed to the neighborhood and also committed to being good stewards for this historic property. So I think, Claire's pretty much covered everything. So I guess both of us just want to state, if you have any questions or comments, we're here to answer. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to present.
Thank you. Do any board members have any questions? I'm not seeing any raised hands. So if you are done, we will see if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak to this. Thank you. So Brenda, do we have any members of this public raising their hands at this point?
I do not see anyone yet. If you would like to speak for this public hearing, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. We do have one member of the public who has raised a hand at this point. So hopefully Aubrey can deploy the timer, and Catherine Barth, I will enable your microphone, and as I will save Abby's voice and ask you to please Raise your hand and swear to tell the truth.
I will tell you the truth. I swear. Can you hear me?
We can, and go ahead, please.
It's a project that has obviously had a lot of care and thought in it. And I have a couple of very pretty minor comments. One is about the pediment. And I do think if there's any possible way to restore that pediment, you have excellent photographic evidence of it. And I think it would be a very nice thing for the building to have its pediment back. The other thing that I noticed was the windows, and some of the windows on the second level are in proportion different enough that it's pretty noticeable. So I don't know if that was, I would think that it would be better to use the portions of the historic windows, even if they're new windows, and that by itself would differentiate between the windows. And I wanted to comment that the windows that are being paired for egress seem to have appropriate proportions separately, and together, even there are a paired set of windows that will be appropriate thing to do. So I guess that's it. And I'd like to just kind of acknowledge the owners and the architects, because obviously a lot of thought has gone into that. And you will, through this process, and you'll end up with a very nice addition to your house, and be very happy to go forward with that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Brenda, do you see anyone else who'd like to speak to this?
At this point, I don't see any other hands. I am just pausing to make sure that we get everyone who would like to speak. And I think we are safe to close, Abby.
Okay, so we'll close public comment for 429 Highland Avenue. We do always offer the applicant and design team an additional 3 minutes if there's anything you wanted to rebut that was said. But I don't know if you have anything additional to say after Catherine Barth's remarks.
I think we do. I would just like to say thank you again to Claire, and thank you to the board for having us and letting us come and present our project. And those are great comments from her. But we would, I think we'll take those into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we will move on to board deliberation. Before we get started, I want to thank you guys for the great renderings, because they were very helpful for me to see the house as Claire moved around it. So thank you for that. And, you know, during this virtual format, we've been going alphabetical by first name to get input from boards, but any board members happy to defer to someone, or we can come back to you. So Bill, I don't know if you're ready to kick it off.
I'm going to defer to Ronnie.
Thank you, Bill. Chelsea.
I don't particularly have any comments. I feel like this was a very thorough process. They went to LDRC twice, and it seems like this proposal, with the conditions that have been put on accepting this proposal, I think meet the requirements. And I feel like it's been 10 months, 9-10 months of them going back and forth trying to meet all of the ideas that have been put forward. So I'd like to hear what others have to say, but I feel good about where it is at this point.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea. John?
Well, I could just defer to Ronnie and not have to do anything tonight, but I think that my general feeling about this as presented is it's extremely well thought out and it's reflective of a very good process between staff and the applicants and working with the guidelines. I guess the one area I appreciate the restoration of the original line of entry into the house. I think that's a strong move, which does restore the front of the house. It might be interesting or nice to have that pediment in the roof restored, although looking at the photographs, and I'd probably have to see more of them, it seemed like there was some awkwardness in that placement of the pediment relative to what the columns want to do and what the door behind it was doing, and that could just have been perspective in the photographs. So that would be something that could be, I guess, resolved with a little more study if they choose to go ahead with that. I think just restoring the line of entry is probably sufficient to at least garner a general approval at this point. I think removing the side entry into the house certainly doesn't lose anything from the historic character in my mind, and cleans up kind of the massing and appearance of the house from that side or on that elevation. The one thing I think is a little bit troublesome is the cross intrusion of the proposal wall and the historic roof line on the I guess west elevation, and the loss of that little dormer. And I don't think that's necessarily a fatal condition to approval, but I do think it's something that needs to be discussed. There may be a little more elegant solution there. I understand why it was done, by the way. Probably just to simplify drainage on the roof and to intersect the roofs in a way that seemed logical. But it's just, that is slightly visible from the public realm, that side of the house. And I think a little bit of massage could probably occur in that area of the design. Otherwise, I also think that the kind of more coordinated approach to the windows, the fenestration is more, even though it's replacing some non-historic windows, it's a little more consistent overall with what would have been there historically had this house been done to this scale in its original era. So I guess with that, move to Ronnie.
Yeah, I am in general agreement with my colleagues here. I mean, starting with the front, I think everything that's being proposed at the front of building is an improvement. And, you know, I applaud the applicant and designers for, you know, those steps forward to the restoration piece associated with that. And everything I'm seeing, you know, advances it, and it's really great. You know, the pediment for me, you know, it'd be great if pediment was there, but if not, well, it's not a demerit in the sense that like you haven't, you know, it's not a process of subtraction that you're going through here. You're actually incrementally restoring it. Similar to John, you know, I've got a couple comments about the roof forms, and you know, the design team and the owners understand this building the best, you know, so I'm sure there are a ton of ideas that we could all share, and, you know, maybe none of them are feasible. But, you know, this is a 1.5 story building. The building's 2nd story plate, the exterior wall, comes down pretty close to floor. I don't know, is it like within 2 feet, maybe under 30 inches? And, you know, that really is the bigger picture of this building, is that it's a 1.5 story, and where it's not, there are dormers that are stuck into the side of it to get the clearance in order to get the head height, to get the windows built into that dormer. And I'm bringing that up because I feel like if that is the bigger picture diagram of the building, if you go to the west side of this, you know, there are a handful of proposed deviations from that idea. And I know why. Like, I know you're trying to like connect these things and get usable space, and what is challenging to get usable space, and those roof forms are tough. I do need to ask the applicant a quick question. This drawing, that's the proposed west elevation, is slightly different than the proposed west elevation that is also included in the packet. That's just strictly your drawing set. And in particular, the joint that's shown at the top of this, and let me just see if I can draw on this. I used to be able to. Can I do that anymore? Or did you guys disable that for me? They're doing too much of that. I found it. Here it is. So they haven't disabled me yet. So basically, I'm going to draw a red line here at the top of the page. This zone in the applicant's drawings shows the roof form kind of extending back, whereas this drawing doesn't. So just to confirm before I get all the comments, is the red stuff part of your proposal or not?
No, it's not. Where the line is drawn as existing and new, that's where the original gable extended to, and that's where we're proposing to keep it that way.
Great. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, you know, as you know, and as the design guidelines call out, I'm gonna try a thicker pencil here. Maybe that'll do. You know, retaining something in here that talks about and maintains the original from anything that's proposed is important. And so keeping that roof corner as you're doing it at the very top, you know, I do believe is consistent with that. But that being said, you know, similar to what John is saying, and I think we heard some of this in the staff report, you know, that type of intrusion of roof onto the historic piece of the building, you know, I do believe is inconsistent. And I'm hoping that there's a little bit of a dialogue here. Like, I don't just want to be the talking head. So I'll share my thoughts, and I'm hoping that we can talk about it as a board. And because the applicant didn't really have a presentation, and they've gone through such a process, I would love for them to be able to respond to some of this so we can kind of understand what the path forward might be. So that being said, like, that area that I've highlighted in red seems to be problematic in my mind. I'm just going to point out a couple other things, and maybe we could talk about all of these together. You know, the pitch of this roof is, I think, foreign to the building, and it looks a little more suburban to me, because all of the other roof forms, you know, that our pitches are, you know, 12/12s, I think. And that's not to say that you can't introduce a different roof form, but I do think that this cross gabled form and the cross gabled form is foreign, and the pitch of the roof is foreign. And so I think that's something worth talking about as we kind of move forward. And another part of this, not that I have a solution for any of this, is, you know, it doesn't seem typical for, in this building, the windows that are underneath a gable end to be separated. You know, they're always grouped together, except for the front where there's a single. So there's a little bit of unusual stuff happening there. And then I would also say, I know why all this stuff is happening, but there's some real things happening with the roof there that I think are just unusual. And again, I recognize that what you're trying to do is connect all of these forms that are that are challenging. So similar to staff, I think that there is an opportunity to introduce different roof forms. And so the shed roof form, if it is a meaningful way to make what I think in this case is like a connector, and the guidelines talk quite a bit about this. It's like, how do you connect from old to new? If there's an introduction of a new roof form that allows us to do that, that seems like an appropriate place to do it. Second, if you needed to use that form again as a dormer form on an addition to help differentiate new from old, that is something that I think we have approved and seen in the past. And there's certain ways of doing that. If you just go to the rear elevation, I just want to talk about that for a quick second and then hear from everybody and maybe see if we can get to some voting and again, and I'm hoping to hear from the applicants. So, this is another discussion piece, but so if the major gable is the gable that we're looking at on the back of house, I guess one question I have, it doesn't have to be, by the way, because I know in plan, like this stuff here is just, unused space. I think you built it in there to kind of drop the plate. I think I saw that. But that being said, like, I'm curious if this is the major gable, is there a way to make this plate height reference the other plate heights in the building? And not that I know if this would actually work and make it better, but it seems to me like at the front of house, the form really brings this down lower to help differentiate the primary gable from things that are subordinate, that behave more like dormers built into it. This is just all food for thought. Like, again, I'm curious to hear what the applicant has to say. And then lastly, like on this rear elevation, on the front of this building, the major thing, and I know this is a design thing, but the major thing is like, mama bear, baby bear. Not that it's working as I just drew it, but that's how that works, right? There's a telescoping. And again, not that you have to do it, but I see that those are the form patterns that we see at the front that maybe in principle might apply if they're, needed. I agree that you can put a second floor outdoor space as you did it. It's nestled in the form. It's like setback. All of those things I think are, working well. And then oftentimes this conversation comes up, which is like, why is there so much glazing? And my opinion on that is, and this is an opinion thing, right? Like there's room in the guidelines for us to, service the traffic cops to decipher it and not just do a red light and a green light version. And I believe that the guidelines allow for this opportunity for greater glazing exactly at a location like this at the rear of the building. And I think that what's being suggested here, in my opinion, in terms of quantity of glazing, its location is approvable. It is this new area on the building. And then lastly, if you just go to the other side of the building that we haven't talked about yet, similarly, again, I don't really have solutions to these things I'm bringing up, but similarly, there's this somewhat foreign shape, which in the past they managed to put windows in major roof forms with dormers. And, there's quite a bit of, plan articulation, not to say that it can't happen, but, that's having an unusual roof form that's connecting it all. And then similar to the other side, we've got this overlap. And I know you got program in those things, which are like bathrooms and mechanical rooms and stuff that shift back and forth. But I believe that the most significant of all of the things that I've talked about that might really, be the most consistent with the guidelines is like how to help differentiate old from new better at this location. And then, I guess the challenge that I would propose for us to have a conversation about is, how the back of house might be maybe more consistent with the language of forms elsewhere. So, and maybe the applicant has some things to say about that. I'd like to hear, but how about our board talk a little bit more and then we give them room to chat with us if that makes sense to you, Abby, and fellow board members.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie. John, I see your hand up at the moment.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a clarification on the opposite elevation. The position of the original roof line, which Ronnie just spoke about. So that little dormer and the roof that it's attached to was added to the length of the roof. Was it part of an earlier renovation or change to the house? Tim, I think, could address that.
That little dormer, it's hard to tell from the photograph where the original ridge line, that the line above the dormer ridge ended. There's in the photograph, you see the tree and you catch the ridge through the tree.
Yeah, okay, well, that's what I'm saying, but that was not part of the original roof line.
It doesn't, it seems like that was an addition at some point. That's kind of what we assumed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little less, yeah, okay.
It's kind of the mama bear, papa bear analogy.
Right.
You know, that being like a mama bear that was extended below, it extends the plane of that roof plane, but drops the ridge to recenter that volume.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that was an addition to us.
All right.
So just to confirm, currently these two roofs are on the same plane, they're coplanar?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so this vertical line here is just like a demo line.
Right.
John, did you have anything else at the moment? I see Bill's hand is also raised.
No, I'm fine. That I just wanted a clarification on that.
Bill?
Yeah, Claire, can you tell me what the increase in square footage is for this new addition to the existing home?
I think that would be a better question for Tim.
Okay, Tim, can you tell me what the increased square footage is?
Let's go to that.
So maybe, Claire, maybe there was something in the packet that I didn't see, but I was looking for, usually, you know, there's a chart that shows existing square footage, new square footage, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I'm going down this particular line is it's looking to me like the original home with this proposed addition is now starting to become somewhat incidental to the final structure. I mean, it looks that way from the art, from what I'm seeing right here, but I'd like to see whatever square footage is that we have. And if you can find that, interrupt me as I continue to talk, because I have a couple other points, and I'm glad I let Ronnie and John go first because they got me to thinking. That intrusion of the new roof into the existing historic roof does give me some concern.
We have the numbers if you want to be interrupted.
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
The existing is 3112 and we're adding 392 for a total of 3504.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the intrusion of the new roof into the existing historic roof. This is again going down the same theme that I'm kind of building in my mind here, that the original property is being somewhat overshadowed by all the new additions being added to it. And I would agree with Ronnie that that's something that we need to explore to see if there's a way that we can minimize that or eliminate it entirely. I also agree with Ronnie about the windows. I know, we're building something new to something old, and the guidelines do try to steer us in a direction where we should not conform or confuse the new with the old. But I do think in terms of the window massing, I think that is something that we should encourage. I think the space between the existing windows as drawn here is inappropriate. I would much rather see, like on the original dormer to the right, on the original home here, looking at the proposed west elevation, a massing more like that. I'm interested in your choice of paint colors. I see if we approve this as we see it here today, I know there are other homes across, thank you, Claire. I know there are other homes around you that have a similar scheme, although not a black trim. One of the directions we were going with our paint guidelines was to avoid sharp contrasts like this, where sharp black goes up against a light body. And from my perspective, this sort of violates that direction we're trying to go in. But I do see that there are other homes around, and I'm concerned that once this property gets completed as it's projected to be here, that this house is going to lose some of its charm. Now, if somebody can show me that this is how it was originally constructed to look, that there was a historic precedent to put this particular scheme in place when the house was first built, then I'll concede to that. But left to go to my own opinion and my own taste and my own understanding of where we're trying to take the district paint guidelines, this paint configuration to me does not seem appropriate. And then lastly, I know that we're going to be having these cross gables off the back of the property, or kind of sort of off the back. But it doesn't seem appropriate. I know staff says it is, and maybe everybody else thinks they are, but I look at the rest of this property and I see little bay windows, little coves, small little dormers. And now suddenly this house is going to have a whole chunk added to it that's going to be kind of going across the grain to that. And now we're going to have much larger cross gable forms that the original house never had. And even apparently the prior additions did not have. So those cross gables give me a little bit of concern as well. So those are my comments. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, Bill. And I'm going to weigh in before we start kind of the next part of this discussion. And there is a luxury going last, because I think my colleagues have already brought up some things that will guide the next portion of this discussion. What I heard from my colleagues is we're all in agreement that bringing the front porch back to what was shown in that 1939 photo and moving the front door, the main entrance back there, we're all in agreement with that. I personally would love a little more exploration of having the pediment back. Although that being said, in your rendering, there's a wonderful, simple elegance to it as it's currently proposed. But I do see that photo does have that pediment. And I think that Ronnie and John articulated it best. My concerns, my hesitations were with the intrusion into the historic roof form. As Ronnie so accurately pointed out, where you're putting this addition, you're actually demolishing a 1993 addition and building, I think, a much better addition in its place. You are putting that at the only place I think it can really go on this house, even to the point of Ronnie, your point, where if you're gonna have that mounted glazing at the rear, this is, or on the house, that is really the only place it could go. So I think first and foremost, the conversation is more about the roof form. Bill, I do kind of see where you might have thought it was sort of starting to lean to not be a subordinate to the historic portion of the house. I do think it's well designed. My biggest concern personally is the intrusion into the historic roof.
Yeah, and since you referenced me, I'm going to just jump in there and say, looking at this particular perspective with the proposed south and the existing south, you see a lot more mass being added from street view to this property than was here previously. And that is always something that we are concerned with. We're always concerned with what, can be visible and seen from the street. So that was partly why I said what I said. Wasn't just the fact that we have these cross gables, but we have a bunch of different forms now coming into play. Just looking at that proposed south front elevation, you can see there's a lot of busyness going on behind this property, which now protrudes into the street face.
Ronnie, I don't know if you would like to pick up the baton next and
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll take the baton. Can we go to the west elevation? And Abby and fellow members, do you feel as though this is appropriate, and is this an available opportunity to ask some questions to the applicant and kind of have a dialogue?
I mean, I do, because of all the nuances within this proposal, and I would rely on Lucas to interrupt us if we can't continue to ask the applicant specific questions as our deliberations progress.
Yeah, I agree with you, Abby. I think that this is the only chance we get to have this kind of, I guess, more deliberative discussion. This is a very complex proposal. And as I was saying, my inclination is to approve this in general, but there are unresolved issues, or issues that I think need some additional kind of, I guess, analysis and response that we're just not going to get an opportunity to do it beyond this process tonight.
And I agree. The one thing I did not say is I'm generally, generally in favor of everything, but there are some details that need to be discussed and feedback provided.
I mean, is this something we should be able to clear out right here about whether or not we find the proposal generally acceptable in terms of mass and scale? And then we can talk about details to get ironed out back at another DRC review. I'm sorry, did I freeze everybody?
I would like that. I would like to have some consensus among board members about what it might look like if there were conditions associated with an approval. And I believe in order to get there, I would also personally like to hear some feedback from the applicant to hear whether or not they think it's workable. Because the worst thing would be for us to approve something with conditions that make it just impossible for them to deal with. And then we put them in an unusual circumstance in which we've created a very burdensome condition that they didn't have opportunity to air here, but it's codified in a condition that goes to DRC, which they need to comply. And so
Very
I
well
just
said, Ronnie.
Yeah, I think that's the
I'm not
goal.
I'm not saying we need to be in agreement with the applicant. There might be a conclusion in which there's a denial, but I would like to explore all of that because I know what it's like to be in those shoes. And, you want to be able to have the talk, and we have an opportunity to do it now. I feel like it's respectful if Lucas thinks it's possible.
Well, I would think, generally speaking, best to do the Q&A with the applicant after their presentation, but given the trajectory here and the complexity, I think we can give that a try and see how it goes.
Good. Yeah, I think it would have been impossible to do the Q&A because I would have had to do a narration thing. Who wants to do that at that point? So I'm just going to jump in and ask some questions. I feel that you're hearing kind of a common voice from the board about this aspect of the proposal. And we also heard that from staff. I think there's multiple pieces associated with that, but the first part is about its relationship to overlapping the historic roof. And I will just throw in one more piece here so that Tim and Alyssa can speak to it. This roof form that steps down and it becomes smaller is more common for a connector type proposal that, is very explicitly outlined in the guidelines. It's not the only way to do it, but the two challenges with what I think is being demonstrated as a connector here is one, that it overlaps the historic building in a way that I think is more or less non-compliant. And then two, it kind of would, if there was just a simple severing of it, create I would also say, a little bit of an unusual situation on the side of the building where it's butting up roof forms in a way that I think is less sympathetic in nature. And so typically what we like to see is a subordinate form in between potential new proposed form and historic form that really looks like a link. And what we see here, I think, isn't so much a link for the two reasons that I described. So I'm wondering if the applicant or applicant representatives could talk a little bit about that, and if they see any solution that we might be able to iron out, at least at the DRC level, if this were to move forward with that condition.
Sure. Let me try to take a stab. What's the reason for the overlap is it's really plan driven on the second floor. So that section that's overlapped is a part of a bathroom that is the sink and the toilet there, frankly. So we could, we can probably do something because this is a very tight plan. And the hallway is driven by the location of the front original structure has two bedrooms on either side of a hallway. So that hallway in the staircase sort of sets us up for the axis of the plan. And as you can see, that dormer that is original makes that portion of it's really sort of an attic, somewhat habitable in there. So that's the reason that we tried to get we tried to put program there that didn't require a lot of head height, but that could be usable. But I think we might be able to
resolve it.
We might be able to do that.
Yeah, we could finesse it.
Yeah, it might be a little bit of a plan rework, but that's frankly why that is like that. Just to get, it's just under 8 feet at that point.
And then you want to address the gable in the back, that it was higher.
I'll just, the question about the massing from the street, that was also, if you look at the rendering, which Claire flipped back to, and you look at this elevation, the distance and the lowering of the rear gable from the front gable, if you're standing at the street level, you'll never see the rear gable and the rear addition, it just is, in terms of perspective, it doesn't, you won't see it. It's the other elevation from the front.
Yeah, there's a model.
Yeah, the
So-
south elevation. We need the south elevation.
Yeah, there.
There you go.
So because it's actually
Oh.
lower than that ridge is lower, and it's so much further back, you'll never see it. So
Hold
know,
on,
and-
Claire, there's another one. There's another one showing the proposed.
yeah, that's a 2D elevation in which everything is sort of brought to the same point, which is the surface of the drawing. And so that drawing is,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, that drawing, that's an elevation drawing in which everything is given, there's no perspective to this drawing. So, you know, you see everything in the same
Plane. really.
plane. So in reality, the distance is not taken into consideration in these drawings. So that's why it was important to do the rendering, but just to put that out there, that you really won't see the mass of this proposed rear addition from the street.
And do we want to mention that there was a previous?
You know, I'm sorry, but I have a hard time believing that. I mean, if you were standing across the street and looking at this property, you're telling me you would not see any of those new structures that you would propose to add?
I mean, you'd see a bit of it, but you wouldn't see it from that view.
Well,
that
yeah,
the-
right.
The front
Yeah, you'd
elevation
see
is
it
drawn.
because you see the side of the building.
There's also a steep grade as the street goes across the street. I
Yeah.
believe you wouldn't see it from across the street, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there's what? There's what?
There's
from
a grade,
across-
there's a grade, you know, our home is higher on the hill than across the street significantly, because our home sits up on a hill. So when you look from across the street, I really do not believe you will see any of it.
If this,
She'll be looking up at it.
Yeah.
if this perspective were that we're looking at right here, Tim, if we had changed this to move it maybe 20 feet to the right, would we
Yep.
see the new additions?
Yeah, you will. Yeah,
You'll see a piece of it, but the adjacent house is actually very close to this house, so there isn't much visible
it's
from the
it's like it's a
street.
really hard house to
Yeah, I
photograph.
mean, the house is,
I
because
know,
of
I
that,
walk,
but-
I walk.
but
by
yeah,
this
you will
house all
see
the
it.
time.
Yeah,
but it will be subordinate.
Right.
It's, to me, if I can jump in, like, it is gonna be pretty impossible to build anything at the back of this house without it being somewhat visible from some location from the front. But I do think, and whether it's a lot or a little, like depending on where you're standing or the proximity of things or the hill. But I do think really what the guidelines call out is, you know, the separation between the old and the new, the connector, and the aspects of the proposed addition that are sympathetic in nature without being, or without replicating and confusing the message of what the history is. And the balance of those things, how those things come together, you know, allow for an addition at the back to maybe poke out a little bit. I really believe that the first piece that is the part for us to kind of grapple with is the connector. And if we go to the other elevation, you know, I think the true challenge here is, this is a perfectly fine elevation. You know, is I'm just going to draw the whole thing. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but how much of that can be maintained in some way that's like a smaller, stepped down version of building. It doesn't even have to be there. It's just, you know, something in this zone that is smaller, that then allows for, and let me draw it smaller, that then allows for something in this zone that's bigger. And I shouldn't have drawn it as high as the primary roof, you know, because you clearly know those ideas, is really, I think, the dominant concept that, you know, we tend to, and the guidelines call for, and the Leon call for. You know, I've more or less drawn the typical roof form that, you know, is the pure extrusion of this. And it's the dumbbell version. You know, you guys have probably seen this before in other buildings.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
it's the
And we
dumbbell.
could look at that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the dumbbell version of this is a little more obvious to me, where you know, and I'm not suggesting that you go into total rework here, like that would drive me nuts if I were you, but like if you find, you know, where you put dormers and roof forms, and those are just squares, but dormers and roof forms and a major roof form that emulates the existing roof form, but it's different in its details, but similar in its massing. It's kind of the rule, you know? So not that you should do that, but I think a version of that could, you know, help clean up some of these things. And again, I really apologize because I know that you've got head height issues in there and you're trying to get program over there in the bathroom, in the laundry room, maybe a mechanical room. I can't remember because I looked at it the other day. I get it, like it's tough, but that is the concept and principle. And I think the part that would make it approvable in my mind today with conditions of exploration would be to really pursue a connector piece that follows the guidelines, that's diminutive in nature, giving you greater opportunity to explore other types of roof forms, whether or not it's a cross gable at the back, I don't know, like, I think you could debate it, you know, but I feel like that part would be the piece that I would say would be a condition of approval. And maybe we could talk about the other ones, other pieces that I've described as things worth exploring. But I think if you got this part right, right in the sense of it being like more aligned with what the regulation calls for, and you know what preservationists on a whole are aiming to do.
Yeah. We got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to make sure I cover the bases. I believe that piece of it could be approvable. And if we could go to the back for a quick second, this is a question and it's not a, like, you know, this isn't a condition in my opinion, but you know, the 1.5 story thing that I brought up earlier and the way that might apply, let me see if I can make a straight line here. Yeah. And the way that might apply at the back with, if you were to maintain, let's just say the gable is, but extend it so it looks more like a 1.5 instead of, I don't know, a 1 3/4. I would think would help the case. Just saying, like, and in fact, I think it might actually hide the whatever it is that you end up doing with dormers just a little bit better, so they're not as, they just don't look like they're, you know, sticking out like they do right there, right? Because it would be more like nestled in the roof, like a true dormer does of this era. I don't know. Alyssa, what do you think about that?
Well, I think we could definitely look at that, and I do think like the ribbon windows or the sort of the windows on the 2 side elevations, you know,
Should be continuous.
we agree that you know, that's an opportunity to have like 2 windows next to each other or 4 windows, so it reads more
As a band.
and less as punched openings.
Mhm.
That's the primary bedroom, so we can definitely do it on the one side, and the other side where the bed is, maybe it's higher, it goes above the bed. I think that's really easy.
Yeah. Yeah, extending the ridge down, we did do that.
Yeah, we
explore
did it
that.
in an earlier one, and I think if we
We can
keep
do
this cross gable, we did have the cross gable the height of the secondary gable, and then I think we had a comment that we should lower them somewhere maybe 8 months ago, 9 months ago. And I think if we keep the cross gable and it's more steep pitch, similar to the front,
Right.
it makes more sense.
Yeah.
We can just match the
We
pitches.
can-
That's,
yeah,
that's
that's-
fine. We'll just, if we can push it up,
Yeah,
because, you know, it's all about where it ends on the exterior wall.
yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And
Can-
the
can-
color thing, I was gonna mention one thing.
Well, maybe we get to that last, because I
Okay.
feel
Yeah.
the form part is, you know, it's going to be easy for me to talk about the form thing all at once.
Right.
Got it.
But I also have similar, I want to talk about the color too, because I have some clarifying questions for Bill. But can we go to the east elevation quick? I just want one more question here for the applicant. You know, the same types of things apply. And so, you know, obviously you got this big roof. And by the way, like I recognize that this roof pitch is different than the other ones, is at least as drawn, which is a little unusual. It makes me question whether or not it was original. Maybe you guys know, but is it really that pitch?
I think it is,
Yeah.
but you do too.
Yeah, it's pretty steep.
Well,
But
it's not a 12.
at 45. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a 12-12, which is a little weird, but anyway.
It was probably part of the 93 edition.
It looks like it, doesn't it?
Redirected the entry.
It looks like it was an addition. And again, I'm like, you know, I wasn't there in the 1900s, but
Can't see it, yeah.
you know, but I think the connector conversation applies. If you can make it connector, and I would just like it, if you make it the same thing across, that'd be an easy form. And I don't know how you do it, you know, it might be something weird, but it's just the diminutive and it looks like roof and stuff. I think that that would be the way. And then again, I think that this conversation is the same that we had on the other side, and I don't have a solution, you know, but I'm just, you know, those types of things, like what are the scale of dormers and whatever. I think you can get away with deviating from being as like specific as I'm talking about, that like dormers are exactly the size. And I think that there's room to make deviations once you get past this. And if you kind of commit to a dominant roof form, then maybe you can make those changes more easily, and you can introduce something that's a little foreign, because that's the chance where you're like, that, you know, it's not going to be 1-to-1. I don't have a solution for you, but I just, in my personal experience, that's something that we approve, and I know that it's often successful. So I wonder if I can turn this back to my colleagues for a second, because I think I have like two parts. One is, you know, you can hear what I'm saying about this piece of the building maintaining its integrity, about whatever happens in here being something that, you know, follows the more prescriptive rules of a connector. And then there being room for exploration at DRC back of building to explore the concepts that we described. And in my opinion, you know, we could formulate a maybe additional piece to the conditions that talk about it in that way. That's like the middle piece, that's the connector, is more prescriptive, and then the back of building should follow this in concept, and we can explore that through DRC. If that's the case, like I would be willing to like help make the motion, and I would support that.
Now, Ronnie, were you going to speak to the window massing as well?
Yeah, I think Bill, I think yes, you know, I think that there's a vertical proportion to windows. Actually, can we go to the front of this for a second? And my wife's gonna rip some tinfoil, it's gonna get super loud. There it is. So we can go to the front of this for a second. You know, the proportion of windows, there's a couple of different things happening there. You know, language of window, that one's unusually big, but there's a, and let's go to the other side elevation for a minute. Any of the sides that show historic. Yeah, I mean, you know, we got the skinny windows are proposed. I think mostly, Bill, the thing that I see is the windows that are occurring in the upper portion of the proposal on the sides could be reevaluated. And whether or not the gables end up being exactly as they are or are not, it seems to me like they might be a little more vertical in nature or paired in order to talk the same language as the rest of the building.
Yeah. Yeah, and that actually goes to, I did find something in our guidelines under section 455 of our general design guidelines. Maintain the proportion, general style, and symmetry or asymmetry of the existing window pattern. So that's exactly what you're speaking to there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be a part of, you know, I mean, I know that these guys can figure something out about that. You know, window change isn't as hard as the plan change. So yes, I think that that would be important. And just for conversation's sake, I think having all of the same windows in the forms here is also maybe a route that I would recommend changing. And I would say, like, when it's the dominant form, it does the dominant window thing. When it's a subordinate form, it does a subordinate window thing. And I couldn't tell you what's going to happen, because I think that once you put a connector in, there's going to be some other things that come to light. But
And the reason, yeah, the reason you're saying that is you want the window patterning to be connected to the actual form rather than the overall structure.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
subform. You want the subform to be, you want the proportion to be matching the subform that it
Yeah.
exists in.
Exactly. There's a hierarchy of window that also relates to, what it is that's happening with the massing. And this isn't bad. I mean, it's just, that would be something that I would say, like, could be looked at the DRC. It's really not a big deal. It's about the window.
And again, to offer the the architects an opportunity to respond to that piece.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we agree.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and we're kind of picking on you a little bit there. I mean, I know, like, if that was the only comment we had, it'd be like easy breezy. So, but I'm glad that Bill brought it up, because that would be something that clearly would come up at DRC, and it's good to daylight it right now. I think you'd end up hearing that from any of us. And so my hope is that we can maybe move forward with the condition that the one piece was more, is prescriptive, and then the other is, explorative and suggestive.
Hopefully you wrote that stuff down, Ronnie.
Yeah, I can make it up. I can wing it.
And-
Wing it.
And Ronnie, I agree with the direction you've led this conversation, and I appreciate the architect's willingness to explore this. I don't know what John and Chelsea may want to add to this portion.
Well, I've been I totally agree with everything discussed. It was the issue that I was, I guess, originally bringing up about the problem of the cross intrusion and the loss of the historic line. I'm not sure that the strictest notion of a connector is the way to resolve this. But again, that's something that can be worked out in DRC.
Would you disagree? As in other words, John, you're not necessarily in favor of a hard statement in our conditions that say we must come up with a connector style. You're not going to put a whole lot of weight into that necessarily.
No, I think that the statement should address the issue of preserving the completed line of the historic roof.
Right.
And leave it open as to how that's resolved, because I understand the plan difficulties that this is creating, at least as the plan exists. And to really, I mean, the notion of a connector is in my mind, is frequently for something kind of different happening behind the line that is connected, to where you almost even, like when you add something to a building that is an area that changes the use somewhat, or changes some other condition about how the building has been up till that point.
But
so I think that I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of ways this could be solved. And the most important thing, at least for our guidelines, is the preservation of the historic roof and as much of the front side historic character of the house being preserved as possible. And the rest of this can be, as I use the expression, massaged. This is stuff that we can work out in a forum like DRC, And so our conditional language has to direct it towards that without getting too specific, other than the specific comment that we feel like the roof line needs to be preserved. And there are issues with, we feel the proportioning system of the windows and roof slopes and so on, and the issue of color. But I think that we can move towards general approval of this.
Bill, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm raising my hand because I'm gonna introduce a slightly different vector here into the discussion. And John jogged my brain about this. This thing has already been to the DRC a number of times, right? Twice at least.
Yeah. Two.
Yeah, and there was a previous architect before the Stroms hired us and bought the house that had a much higher second story addition in the back.
Got it.
It was approved.
Okay. So it's been back and forth a lot. And that's why I'm kind of wondering, I mean, if the applicant and the architects are okay with the recommendations we're going to embed in our approval, then I guess it's okay. You know, I guess they're agreeing that we could go back to that design review committee and hammer out the smaller details, where here we're kind of gonna give a general approval or disapproval of the overall mass, scale, and idea of what's being proposed with conditions. So just so you kind of understand where we think this might be headed.
Okay.
Yep.
You're shaking your heads. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, this might not be the end of the line, is the point.
Yeah, but that, if we could do it at the DRC level, yeah, we
Yeah.
can work a lot of that out.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, anybody else at this point?
I would love to hear from Chelsea. I can't see everybody, but you know, Chelsea, not to put you in a spot, you feel like you voiced your opinion. If you have anything,
I guess, you know, I defer to the architects when it comes to the technicalities of what looks best. In hearing this conversation, and I'm newer to being on the Landmarks board, but it does feel that we get very deep into the minutia of making something perfect. When, you know, this is somebody's home, they've been trying to fix this and make it the way they want it for almost a year. And so at a certain point, I feel like we have to achieve what we need to achieve to meet the recommendations or the requirements. And, you know, yes, could it always be more to one of our likings? I'm sure it could, but I guess I don't feel compelled to add additional time or money to this project.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Abby, can I suggest one more thing here? I feel like we need to wrap up
Please, yeah.
the color conversation. And so I would ask if Claire could bring up the color. Yep. And then I was just hoping to get some clarification from Bill about some of his comments. Because I was tracking with him, but I was wondering if we could talk specifically about which aspects of this you think are the challenging parts. And I kind of think I was hearing you, it was the black sash. Whereas I'm just going to call it blue, but Buxton blue versus the white trim and body color applications were consistent with the guidelines. Am I understanding that correctly?
I'm going to actually defer to John, but I want to make and I will comment after John weighs in, because he's much more the color expert than I am. But I would really like to see a couple options presented to us by the applicants, not just this particular option. So we don't, so we can give them some, guidance on which direction we're kind of thinking they should maybe go into. And also, whatever choices come out, we should get not a rendering like this, because as you know, this is coming through digitization. And what we need is like an actual application of the paint on some samples of wood that we can actually look at to see how this will actually look. For instance, this says Buxton blue, but through my computer, it looks just like gray to me, but a medium gray. However, if it goes up, on a full building, it might look like baby blue, eggshell blue, which is something we generally aren't going along with. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. So John, if you would like to weigh in, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that the thing that we're based on the color studies that we did for Mapleton Hill District and what we observed and so on. The thing we're finding problematic is I guess the high contrast impact of the black sash color. If that could be brought into the grays or something that would still maintain the kind of drama that you want to achieve with that without the extreme contrast, that would be more consistent with the way color in Mapleton Hill tended to be applied historically. Understandably, I mean, we're in a period of time where high contrast between detail and field color is desirable and is being done quite a bit, but it's not in a historic district or on a contributing property. So that's why we're saying something about it. Yes, Alyssa.
So I just wanted to state some research that we did about color because this is an Edwardian home. I think that's how it's classified. It has the double colonnade in the front and wraparound porch, and the era that these houses were done, which was turn of the century. So from what research that we did, Victorian colors tended to be much darker, like super dark reds and greens. And because at that time the lights were gas lights, so they emitted sort of like a black smoke and a soot on the houses. So they were typically darker during that era. And then Edwardian was the introduction of electricity, which then gave a different light on a house and also didn't have that off-gassing, darker smoke. So those houses tended to be lighter and brighter and a little bit more in this palette. So that's also kind of a little bit of historical research that we did for the Edwardian period. And that's kind of like the introduction of light blues and yellows and sort of a softer palette as opposed to the Victorian heavier, darker, dull colors.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, we actually.
We consulted.
One last comment.
Yeah.
We actually consulted Robert Schweitzer. I don't know if you've ever heard. Have you heard of him? He's
written all these.
He's a
books.
well-known.
I've heard his name.
Yeah. Historic preservation.
And he gave us a few palettes. We'll share those with you.
Okay.
And
I think that the thing that at least that we were responding to is just the ensemble of colors and the issue of the extreme contrast to the detail color, the sash color, and the guidelines for color, the way they're currently written, don't really get as specific to talk in terms of contrast and shade of color, or contrast and value of color. And I think it's the, as I said, it's the fact that the Buxton blue and the white dove kind of create a almost, it's a very pale field, and then you have an almost aggressive black introduced in that. Again, I understand what you're trying to achieve in terms of the drama of making those details distinct. I think it could be softened, that's all. I think that's what we're looking for. That's,
Yeah.
Well, and I want to say my reaction to the proposed for the window sash was more a reaction that I was trying to think of homes in Mapleton Hill that currently had that against a softer palette. But I'd like to see you guys, how we can kind of bring this to closure for this evening. Ronnie, was there something else you wanted to speak to or try to get to a motion?
I mean, I think maybe we move toward a motion.
Okay.
and
Would you
Perhaps,
like to? Okay, thank
yeah,
you.
I think I can do that. I'm gonna make some stuff up, but maybe before I do that, I don't know if Laura, you've been listening so patiently, maybe you have some insight.
Thank you, Ronnie. I don't think I have any insight. Historical preservation is not my area of expertise. I don't see anything here that would particularly trigger something that is planning board's purview. So, but thank you for asking.
I'm gonna quietly read these conditions of approval to myself here quickly. Hold tight.
Take your time.
I can talk more if you want, Ronnie.
Yeah,
Kill
keep going.
some time for you.
No,
Yeah.
that's gonna confuse them.
No, I think I'm okay. I know sometimes modify the written approval, so it's easier for us to track. So I'm just not saying stuff and then like we have to catch up and listen to the recording. Is that possible, Claire? Like if we wanted to add, for example, subsection, 2C6, something about providing additional detail on the color, and then I will add another line in. Can we do a live update on this? Okay, great.
What I would like to add for that, Claire, as you're typing, just provide alternative color combinations or color ensembles for review.
And before I make any motion, I know what I'd like my motion to be.
Ensembles. Yeah.
That would be to make the connector piece prescriptive. But I feel like John was saying something that may be different than that. And exactly what would I be prescribing is that it follows the what the design guidelines say, is that there's something that's diminutive in nature, clearly separates itself from what is the historic to the new. It creates a clear delineation at the right location, like all of the stuff that is like literally written in the guidelines. To me, that feels like it should be prescriptive, but I guess I'm kind of taking some version of a straw poll here.
yeah, to clarify that, Ronnie, I was just saying that it could be as simple as just a break in the plane of the walls, even though the proposed wall is actually out in front of the historic plane, which is sloped.
I think that's the challenge. I think that's
it's
maybe weird.
In other words, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what the design solution to that very issue is, but
we can't
I think
quite.
the design guidelines talk about how that might behave. And
Right.
so, I think like slapping the piece of bread up against the back of the triangular shape of the roof is not what the guidelines say. Not that the applicant did that, because they tried to incorporate it through the extension of the roof form. But if we were to say, hey, if you just cut it off there, it's fine. I don't think that complies. So what I would like to say is something like, I would like to add a condition to this, Claire. Yeah, that is, and I apologize, Claire, if you have a better word for this, but I would say include a connection to the historic roof form and rear building face that more closely complies with the guidelines. And I know that's still ambiguous, but like, you know, I'm not going to recite all the guidelines. They're there. So we can go look at that, and maybe that gives us the opportunity for it to be a little more expansive for the design team to figure out exactly what that looks like. And I think they've heard enough of me talking about this, and probably everybody, all 18 people on this call, to like understand in spirit what I'm describing. And if there's questions, we could refer to those guidelines.
No, I think that's great language, Ronnie.
Yeah,
Cool.
and
Okay.
frankly, I can never get enough of your mellifluous voice, Ronnie.
Cool. I'm like on all day, on Zoom meetings every day, all day. You can chat to them. I'll just give you the link. So if Claire, if you're willing to, I'm going to refer to these as the conditions of approval. And Claire, if you're willing to go, Lucas, I hope not to have to read all of those. But I move that the Landmarks Board adopt the staff memorandum dated November 2nd, 2022 as the findings of the board, and conditionally approve a landmark alteration certificate to restore the front porch and replace a rear addition with new rear addition at 429 Highland Avenue, a contributing property in the Mapleton Hill Historic District as shown on plans dated September 6, 2022, finding that the proposal meets the standards for issuance of a landmark alteration certificate in Chapter 911-18 VRC 1981 and is generally consistent with the general design guidelines, provided that the stated conditions are met. Stated conditions are reported as updated in this staff conditions of approval listed here.
I'll second that.
Lucas, you cool with me doing that?
Well, can we be clear about what we changed from the original that was in the memo? There's a new 2B, correct?
Modifications to those conditions that were included in the memo are the addition of condition of approval 2B and 2D sub 6.
And can you read those?
Yes. Modification 2B is to include a connection to the historic roof form and rear building face that more closely complies with the guidelines. And 2D sub 6 is to provide alternative color ensembles for review at DRC.
All right, thanks, Ronnie.
So Ronnie, thank you for the motion, and Bill, you seconded. Is there any additional discussion or amendments to this motion? Hearing none and not seeing any raised hands, we'll do a roll call vote. Bill?
Aye.
Chelsea?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so the motion passes unanimously. I do want to thank Andy. You're a wonderful steward of this house, and I want to thank the architects too. You guys have been great to have this dialogue with us this evening.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Can I
guys.
ask a quick question? Sorry. It looked like there's a lot of items on the list to be reviewed in LDRC. And I was just wondering if it would be possible. I've seen, you know, the 30 minutes goes by pretty fast. I think that's what they have in LDRC. And I was just wondering for this particular project, if the applicants could receive more time so that they don't have to go to a fourth LDRC meeting. Just so that they have enough time in that meeting to address all the issues and not extend it further.
Well, and I know sometimes at LDRC an agenda item's 45 minutes, but I think it's a good point, Chelsea, about making sure it could potentially get resolved in just one meeting.
Yeah, I would presume that staff would do the assessment of how much time would be required for these. And if it takes, a half a morning or an entire morning just to get it done, then that's what we should do.
Right. We have spent that time
Yeah.
in LDRCs
Yeah.
before getting things through that
Yeah.
need to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
also to be
Mhm.
sure, Claire, that, one of the two architects are involved in that review. At least one, if not both of them.
Yeah, we'll
Mhm.
both be
We'll
there.
be there.
Well, it's gonna take more time if.
No,
both
I
of
meant
them are
Ronnie,
there.
or I meant the
The
landmarks.
third
board.
Oh, what are the,
Yeah, I meant the
architects on our
landmarks
board?
board architects. I mean,
Oh.
John Decker and or Ronnie Palucio
Yes.
as the landmarks board representatives, one of those two at least. Because
Yes.
if you put me and Chelsea on this, or, me and.
I mean,
Abby,
I'll just
we're
say it
not
looks
gonna-
great.
Yeah, we're not
Put
gonna
me
be
on
the
it.
proper, we're not gonna be the full proper, sets of eyes you want on this thing to
Yeah.
help guide staff through it.
Yeah, sorry. I made the request because I have seen LDRCs where there wasn't enough time to complete, and I would just hate for someone who's coming back for the
Yeah.
third
for
time, plus the
third time.
landmarks board meeting, to not get it done in one. So it's just a request to give this project more time at LDRC meeting.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. So Claire, I think we're ready to move on to matters.
All right.
And I guess the applicant follows up with staff. I think we've completed that case. And then they follow up with you, Claire, and we set another meeting for DRC and we'll go at it. So good luck, guys, and thanks for being patient.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Abby, are you going to need a backup to wrap this up? How's your voice? Your voice seems like it's barely there.
It's better than it was on Sunday. Claire's voice is not much better.
Maybe John can take
Yeah,
it.
I am the vice chair. I could jump in here and
Go for it.
and talk about this. I don't have the cheat sheet in front of me, but I can see this panel. So these are the matters that we have for discussion. We have, the first matter is the Historic Boulder Holiday House Tour, which is Saturday, December 3rd. The information for Historic Boulder is provided there. And this is a great thing that I haven't even attended yet. Since I've been on the board, I attended it once previously. So it's worth doing, and I may do it myself this year. Also, and this has been in everybody's email, the 2023 Saving Places Colorado Preservation Inc. Conference is February 8th to 10th, 2023. I assume this is an actual in-person conference this next year. I haven't read the emails that closely yet. If it's remote.
It's both in person and virtual.
Okay, because they
Next
do
year,
have
February.
great workshops.
They do. And
Conference.
And
John,
it's in Boulder.
Boulder. It's in Boulder this
So
year.
Oh
that
my
makes
God.
it even better.
Yeah.
They have these great workshops that people.
Well, there should be no
consider
reason
doing.
not to go to this if it's in Boulder then.
Yeah, there's no excuses.
Well, there could be excuses, but
But there's no reason.
well, there could be extenuating circumstances. You never
Well,
know.
there is that. That's true. And then we have an update on in-person board meetings. And is that coming from Claire?
My update is pretty brief. We are still waiting for the technology to be ready in Chambers before we can give you a real update and start thinking about going back.
Okay. And since this has come around to me to do this, I'm going to throw a fourth item into there that I just think we should all start thinking about now is our annual letter to council, which is going to happen in December. And I just think that's something that should be in our minds collectively so that we can come up with an effective and clear communication this year that will elicit council action if that's what we desire. So there's that. Does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know I should know this.
Well,
but-
what, Ronnie, somebody had their hand up.
Oh, shoot. Was it you? Because I'll talk over you.
No.
I didn't see- Oh, Laura has her hand up. Laura?
I do have I do have something to share with the board, but I would defer to board members if you want to finish your conversation, and I can go last since it's something new.
I think Ronnie.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering what the reminder update about Marcy's return, the timing for that. Sorry, I feel like I should know that. I just don't.
Yeah, sure. She will be back on December 1st and kind of on a part-time schedule through the month of December, but then back in full-time in January.
Okay.
Cool. All right. I think we can move to your comment, Laura.
Sure. So I'm your liaison to planning board, and at last night's planning board meeting, the name of the landmarks board came up quite a bit for a project that we were reviewing. And I'm sure staff will bring this to your attention, but I just felt that as your liaison, I should let you know that happened. And it came up in conjunction with the project that we were doing a concept review for, a concept plan review. And this is a project that has come up for concept plan review previously. It was the second concept plan review. The project is 2504 Spruce Street. So it's a plan for a quite, 101 units are proposed of new housing. And it's for a block that runs from Spruce to Pearl and from Folsom to 26th. So if you can imagine that area of town, like where Hoshi Motors used to be, where the old Aries thrift shop used to be, and there's a little parcel on Pearl. And the reason why it's connected to Landmarks Board is because one of the buildings that is proposed for demolition is an old gas station.
Wow. Yeah.
It's called the Mecca building now. It has like a Pilates studio in there. It
Right.
looks like you're all familiar with that. So that project came up before planning board again for a concept review. And one of the questions was whether planning board had strong feelings about the preservation of that building. And I think the gist of the conversation was that's not our purview, that's Landmarks Board. So I think you can expect that the applicant indicated that they will be applying for a demolition permit at some point. They might change that, but that's currently their intention, is full demolition and then reuse of some of the materials. They want to reuse those glue log beams that are in that gas station and kind of reference the architecture. But they would be applying for a demolition permit, and that building is over 50 years old. And I think Marcy has commented on that previously from a staff perspective. And for what it's worth, City Council discussed the historical aspects of it. I did not watch that City Council meeting, but my understanding of the gist of their conversation was that they viewed the need for more affordable housing as overriding to the need to preserve that building. And you may be familiar with that. But anyway, since that came up yesterday, I just wanted you to know. And again, I'm sure that staff will bring that to your attention at the appropriate time. But since I'm your liaison, I didn't think that I could let that pass without informing you.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure. And Christopher was there as well. So I don't know, Christopher, if you want to add anything to that summary.
No, you captured it well. Yeah, it's the concept, at least as proposed, would demolish the building. There were some architectural references to sort of indicate that structure and the reuse of the glulam beams that are part of that building. But obviously, those conversations will occur when and if we do actually receive that demolition request.
Great.
Thank you. Glue lamb. You can tell I'm not an architect. Sorry that I mispronounced
Glue
that. Thank you.
lamb.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Well, Abby, do you want to adjourn or you want me to do it?
You go for it, John.
Okay, the November Landmarks Board meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.